We are back with our final part of lesson 4. So we were able to generate the tables both based on the 5 models we had, as well as the tables that come with ASP.NET Identity that we'll work with later on in the course. So I've pushed my changes up to GitHub. Now let's see how these work. So we've got this categories controller here and some views, but I actually want to replace these. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to delete the categories controller as well as the categories view folder. If we need to reference these files, I can always find them on GitHub from my earlier commits. So I'm going to delete my categories controller. And then inside of views, I'm also going to delete the subfolder for categories here as well.
Professor, may I ask a small question that came to mind right now?
Sure, Alex, go ahead.
We just created the tables from our project, but what happens if we need to make some changes on our tables? Should we do like on our project and on our database as well? How do we proceed with that?
You know what? Actually, that's a great. Let's do that. How about that? Rather than me answer the question, why don't we try it?
Okay.
So let's just look at maybe something here. Maybe there's another validation rule we want to add. Okay, here's something we could do. So our category, notice, let's look at the category table for a moment. So we can see here's our column. Our name property is the character length is max, which is way too long, right? We don't want someone entering like 1,000 characters for a category name. So what we could actually do here is on the name property in our category model, let's set a max length here of like 100. So now we've got a discrepancy. We need to change something. So what we want to do is change it in the model, and then we'll run a new migration, and the migration will update the table for us. Okay, so in the category model, let's add this max length attribute. And then I can go back to my package manager console, my little PowerShell window. If you've closed the window, you can turn it on again through Tools, you get Package Manager and Package Manager Console. So I'm going to create a new migration and then run update database again. So I will run add -migration, and now I'll put in a description, set category name length. Okay, so there shouldn't be any spaces here. So I'm describing, much like with a Git commit, we're describing the change we want to make to the database structure. So I'll hit enter. I'm just going to ignore those warnings. And now I can run the command update database, and it will execute this migration on the database. So it says it's done. And now I'll refresh here. Did that work or not work? Let's see. Right, so now notice our name property is modified. It's no longer max, it's 100 characters. So absolutely, Alex, it's common. I'm glad you raised that question. It's very common that we need to change database structure. Yeah, it's great. So that way also we can ensure with the migrations that our models and our database, they're always in sync. and that our database is an accurate representation of our models. Alex, does that help?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, glad you raised that question. So now we're going to use, we've used the migrations to generate the tables. Yep, Manjinder, same thing. So if we want to add a new model, let's say, okay, we want to add, same thing. We want to add a, for example, shipping model. We go ahead and create the class. We'd add a migration, we update the database, and we'll now have a shipping table in the database, or payment table, or whatever it is we want to. So now we're going to use the scaffolding tool to generate a controller with working views. So I've deleted the categories controller. We're going to rebuild it, but this time we're going to use the scaffolding engine for this. So I'm going to right-click controllers. I'm going to pick Add Controller. So last week we used this, MVC controller empty. This time, we want MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. So I'm going to pick Add. Wants to know what model. Well, again, we want the category model. This time, last week we left this blank, this data context. We now need to use our application DB context. So we're going to use that database connection class that Visual Studio created. We're going to have this box checked that says generate views. All three of these boxes will be checked, and the controller name will be categories. Right? So automatically, if we pick the category model, it'll give us the right name of categories controller. So make sure your little pop-up window looks like mine, and then just click the Add button. So the model is category, data context is application DB context. We're generating views, we're referencing the script libraries, we're using our layout page, and it's called categories controller. So the scaffolding tool is going to build the controller and build the views. Yes, Manjinder, I deleted the old one, and I deleted the old categories folder inside of views. So let's look at what we got here. So you're going to right-click the controllers folder, choose Add Controller, and we're going to pick Controller with Views using Entity Framework. So in your assignment, you will be creating your controllers and views this way. You'll click Add. You'll pick the category model and your application DB context. And it'll be called Categories Controller. So you'll just click the Add button. Is that good? No problem. So let's look at what's here. It gave us a controller. There's a constructor here. And our constructor, when you instantiate an instance of our class, it takes an instance of the database connection. And it stores it in this kind of class level variable called _context. Okay, so this represents our database connection. And we've got a bunch of methods here. So it says at the URL/categories, we have an index view. We've got a details view. We've got a create, method. And notice there's two versions of create. There's one for get that returns a view. And then we have a second version that runs a post. Same thing for edit. We've got a get method and a post method. And then we've got delete, get, and post. If we look under views, we've now got 5 views: create, delete, details, edit, and index. So let's try this all out. I'll go and click categories. Whoops, server's offline. I'll just start my server up again. Not sure what happened. So now we get this view instead. We get a list. And we can click Create New. So let's start putting some categories in our store. And notice, I think we talked about this last week, because this is a primary key, right now the category ID is hidden. We don't actually see it, which is good. So what category should we have in our grocery store? Okay, yeah, maybe we'll have dairy. That's interesting. What happened here? Hang on just a second. I didn't expect that to happen. Hang on just a second. Let's see what's going on here. Let's just check something in our table. We may need to modify something. Why didn't it work? Okay, so identity specification, that means it's auto assigned. Let's see what's going on. We may need to change something in our model. I think the issue may be here. We shouldn't have this validator on our primary key fields. I think we need to take that out. I'm going to take out the range on my I'm going to try that again. Yes, okay, so now notice it saves to the database. It also gives us views to edit or delete. Okay, so we've got dairy. What else should we have in our store? We've got meat. What other areas of the grocery store? I removed the range on category ID. We shouldn't have that. So just remove that from your category model. Okay, we'll have produce. Yeah, maybe we'll have bakery, sweets. So we'll have a bakery. Yeah, my favorite, Bina. Good suggestion. Produce. We'll have sweets. And we'll have seafood. That's probably good enough. Okay. And notice all this stuff is functional. So if I go in and I want to, edit something, it updates automatically. I can save my change. So all of this is working code. Yes, Alex, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. So here. So let's query. Here's the data. We can see it in the database. So we can also, let's scaffold out. Let's do this process again with the products. Let's scaffold the products controller and views. So I'll right-click controllers. I'll add an MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. This time, our model is going to be the product model. That's really the only thing here I need to change. All the other options will automatically select. So our data context is here. In our views, script libraries layout, it's going to be called products controller. So let's try this. We'll scaffold, we'll let Visual Studio build the 6 files, the controller file, and then the 5 views. So this looks pretty similar. We get the same methods again. Create, edit, index, delete. And now we can try it out if we just hit products. Whoops. I think I just need to build my solution. Update my DLL. Cool. Let's put some products in the store. We're going to see another neat feature here. So I'll click on Create New. Okay, so what are we selling in the grocery store? Remember, this is a global food store, so let's add some food from around the world. What's something from your country that we should put in our store? Okay, so prawns. Manjinder, how much are we selling prawns for? $50, okay. Weight? Okay. And this is a string, right? So 99 kilograms? Okay. Now notice what happened for category. Oh, okay, and it does tell us that has to be a number. Because we set up the relationship in the models, when we scaffold the views, it actually gives us this neat little drop down where we can pick a category. We didn't have to do any coding to populate this. We'll leave the photo. Let's just try to create this. All right. Okay, Yulia wants croissants. Yulia, price? How much are we selling them for? Okay. Weight? What should we put in as the weight? Okay, 50 grams. Category would be obviously bakery. So obviously this page is not perfect, right? There are things we would probably want to do to improve it, and that's going to be the focus of our class next week. But let's add a few more items to the store. What else should we sell in our store? Let's put a few other things in here. Okay. I bought strawberries the other day. I think they were $4.99. Weight, I don't know, what were they? 300 grams. Category would be produce. Oh, I definitely need sushi in my store. Absolutely. Sushi. I don't know, for maybe 250 grams. Seafood. So put a bunch of items in your store. Scott wanted soursop. Scott, what does a soursop cost these days? Never bought one. We can put in any values here. Okay, we'll say $6.99. 500 grams. produce. Okay, so you can put anything you want in the store, and we'll add some more things to this. But you can see we really haven't had to write a code. So how does some of this stuff work? Let's just take a little look under the hood. Okay, so on our index view, we're using our database connection, and then we're using this products DB set. Anybody remember what is this products DB set here? Where do we find this? This is what's querying the database to get the list of products. So notice it's using a DB set of type product. You've got it, Attila. So it's telling us, right, we defined it in our application DB context, which was under data. So in our database connection class, right, we defined a DB set of type product. That's used, remember, to query and save instances of product. What is this part doing? Include p.category. This part I've highlighted in blue. Yeah, because product is the child, this is doing a join to the parent so that in our list, it can automatically show the parent name values. So it's kind of behind the scenes doing a join for us based on what we did in our models, right? Because we said every product has a parent reference of category. So it's using that reference so it can do a join so we can display the product, but instead of just showing the category ID, it actually shows the name. So line 25 is querying the products table and also attaching the parent using our database connection. And then we are loading the view and we're taking our data, converting it to a list. So if we looked at the product index, the code will look sort of similar to what we did last week. We have a model at the top of type product that's IEnumerable because we're showing a list. We've got a table with column headings, and then we've got a loop where we're looping through each record in the model. And we are displaying the various properties of the model. And here we can actually reference the parent object. And inside of it, we have access to all the properties of the parent. And then we've got our links. So we will want to make some changes to this. But the scaffolded views are a great place for us to start. So in your assignment, the biggest part of the work is actually going to be doing this that we did today. It's figuring out what your data model looks like. Once you've determined what model classes you need and what the relationships are, you're just going to build the classes in Visual Studio. You're going to use migrations to build the tables. And then you can just use scaffolding to build your controllers and views. So if we look here, for example, at the product create, take a quick look at how this works, right? When you go to create a product, so at this URL /product/create, this runs a GET request. What happens with our GET request? Well, it gets the list of categories and stores them in the view data, and it loads our view. So we get this form, and that view data is used to fill our drop-down list. When we fill out the form and click submit, instead of this version running, the get version, it now runs a post method. And it connects the inputs to the properties of our model it checks if the model is valid. And if it is, again, it uses our DB set. It adds a new product object, and then it calls save changes on our database connection. So there's no SQL commands that we need to write. Our DB sets can do all of the create, read, update, delete operations. And then when we're done, it redirects us back to the index method. So we will make a few adjustments to this to make our site a little more efficient. And that's going to be our focus next week, is how do we take the scaffolded controllers and views and how do we make them look better? How do we make them work better? You can probably already see on this page it's functional, but if you look at it for a minute, it shouldn't be too hard to make some improvements. Right? There's things here we can add that will improve this, which is what we will do next week. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing with this, which is I'm going to publish this to Microsoft Azure. My first step is I'm going to push my changes to GitHub. So I've got a whole bunch of changes here. Controllers with views. So I'm going to commit and push. And then we're going to look at continuous deployment from GitHub to Azure. So I'm going to log into my Azure portal at portal.azure.com. Now, you won't be able to do this with your global grub if you are using a local database. But I'm going to show you the process because this is the process you'll use in your assignment. I'm going to go and create a resource. And what I want is to create a web app. I'm going to click on Create. I'm going to pick my subscription. And now I can use the Tuesday resource group that I created last week, because this resource group holds my database. So I'm going to put the web application and the database in the same group. It wants me to give it a name, which will be webapp.name.azurewebsites.net. So I'll call it Global Grub. I'm going to publish from code, and it wants to know what stack are we using, which will be .NET 5 on Windows. I'm going to pick East US because that's where my database is. And I want the free hosting plan. So this is not going to use many resources. Only 1 gig of memory. And then I'll create my web application. So this is going to create an empty website that runs at the URL globalgrub.azurewebsites.net. So you can make up your own domain. I'll click create here. Again, you do not have to put your Global Grub project online. You can do all of that locally, but you will need to go through this process for your assignment. So it's going to set up the web project. My code has been updated on GitHub. My scaffolded controllers and views. So I'm just going to wait for this to run. And then I'm going to show you the deployment and the continuous deployment method. It's almost done. So again, you don't have to do this right now. Yeah, Yulia, I haven't included any images, but I will try to take images rather than from Google. I'll try to take them from something like Pixabay where it's royalty free. Okay, so it says my deployment is, we can look at that a bit more next week. you can remind me. So I'm going to go to my website, which is now running. And it shows me, here's the URL. So if I open it up, I get this kind of starter page. Right? Hey, your website's up and running. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the deployment center and I'm going to connect my GitHub repository in. So it says, okay, where's the code source? Do you want to use FTP? I'm going to choose GitHub for continuous deployment. Now, I'm already signed in to my GitHub account in Azure. You probably won't be. So you'll have to first authenticate yourself. It is telling me I need to update my GitHub token, which I'll do. So now it says, okay, which repository? And now I will go and find my global grub project. Here it is. I'll select, I only have one branch. So I'm deploying from my global grub repository master branch. Preview. So now I think I can just click save. So this, yes, Alex. If you want to see it on the live server, you can still see it locally. So you don't have to push as you're developing every time. So now it says it's connected. We'll just have a look here. And you can see if I click on logs, it's deploying the site from my GitHub repository. And you can use different branches, which we won't get into. So Alex, if you want to push changes, you can have like a development branch and a master branch. So the master is deployed to the server, but development you can be updating regularly. You don't really need to do that for our course. So this will tell me when it's done, and then I should be able to launch the site on the Azure server. And then I'll show you what happens when I change the code and push it to GitHub again. I believe the continuous deployment looks for changes every 60 seconds. So let's see. Okay, still running. Takes a little bit to get connected. It may take a couple minutes. Let's see here. So it's set up my deployment, set up my web app. I can probably close those. So still running, still trying. Hopefully this does not take too long.
There is a link, it's a build deploy log. It's this link will follow us to the Google GitHub, and we can see the log of the deploying.
Yep, so that's right. So if we click it, thank you. Yep, we can actually see it here. Thanks.
And click the deploy.
Yep.
And you can see the
everything. Great. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you. This will also show if it fails for any reason, we'll see error messages here. But yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so now it says it's completed. Right. So it's running the deployment command. So that's done. It's running the deployment command now. So all the code has been synced from GitHub. So now it says it's successful and active. And now I can try and load the site. And here we go. Here's our categories with all our data. So it's all working here. So what if I want to make a change? Let me just add a sentence to my home page. I'll go to my home index. I'll say Tuesday, fall 2021. So I'm going to save that change, push to GitHub. So I'm going to commit and push. Wants me to pull changes, which is fine. So now I've pushed. And now we can see it's automatically deploying the new version. Push new changes to GitHub, and Azure already sees those changes. This will happen automatically. Anytime I push changes to my repository now, Azure will automatically sync those. So I'll wait until this is finished. Again, we can look in the log. So it's still building. So right now, my site still has the old message. It's still active, but we don't see the changes yet. Probably take a minute or two for those changes to show. But once this is done, my site should update. So yeah, it's still running. Right now, Scott, yes, they can. We'll add authentication to that in a few weeks. So you have to have a login and you'll have to be in an administrator role to do it. But we had to get the CRUD operations functional first. So this is just going to run. I won't make you sit here and watch it, because it'd probably be another couple minutes to finish. When this is done, if I refresh, I'm going to get the new message on my home page. So Azure will automatically run this, and we can also roll back. So if we publish an update and we break it, we can go and revert to an earlier deployment by clicking on it, and it'll redeploy that version. Okay, so this process, this is part of the DevOps process, which you probably heard a little bit about. It's a bit of a combination of development and operations together. So we're integrating those processes. Yeah, so it's built now. Still needs, I think, to deploy the change, so we won't see it yet. So I think I will stop here. I'll just let that run. It's going to take a little while to deploy. So next week, what we want to do with this is we want to start customizing this. We want to make these pages look better and function better. And that will include things like adding a file upload here. And then we're going to want to customize the design and improve some of the other features and functionality here. So you should have everything you need to do your assignment now. I'll encourage you to get started so that you have time to come and get some help if you need it. Okay, there is a quiz for next week, so make sure you have a look at that item by next Monday. Okay, I know that was a lot to take in today, but it was an important class. Everything we did today is stuff you're going to need in your assignment. The slide deck is on Blackboard with these references about creating the models and the migrations. It's all on Blackboard for you.